This week on Gymwright Live, we interview Sean Buck and learn how to better engage and retain members through systems. For all of you listening to this via podcast, be sure to check out the video version of this interview and the extensive show notes at gymwright.com. And if you're enjoying the show, please leave us a 5-star rating and written review. If you'd like to watch the show live, we record every Friday right here in the network, our free private Facebook group for the motivated gym owners of the world, where they share their best tactics and strategies to grow their businesses. Join the network today and get in on that conversation. All right, now back to the show. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Gymwright Live. I am your host, Marcus Gurzy, and this week we welcome to the show special guest and my good friend, Sean Buck. Sean, pleasure to have you on today, my man. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks. It's an honor to be on.
Awesome. Sean, today we are going to be getting into everything systems, talking about how we can better engage and retain members. You've got an extensive background in not just systems design and implementation, but I mean, you've been all over the place. Tell us a little bit about you and your backstory.
Yeah, sure. So I guess what's relevant here, I mean, I first, getting out of high school, I went to the Marine Corps. I guess that was my first taste into systems because everything's very systematized, you know, from the military perspective. We have standard operating procedures. Also got into fitness around that time. And then when I got out, I worked in the corporate world for quite a while in information technology, so in the technology space. Became a consultant for helping large companies, startup companies implement agile and lean systems to improve their bottom line. I've been on programs as large as $400 million programs, you know, consulted with companies 200,000 people, but also on the startup level. I opened up a gym with Nathan in 2012. Actually, we opened up the same day CrossFit Active Performance did.
That's right. That's right.
Just not too far from you guys. And so that was, you know, I'd been doing CrossFit. I loved it. You know, Nathan, my business partner in Level Method, was my coach at the time. And, you know, we were working on building a competitive circuit, legendary competitor. But we said, hey, let's open up a gym together. So we did. I then went on I had a great opportunity to leave the corporate world and also sold Nathan my half of the gym at that point to go start Grid, the Grid League, professional sport. We were on NBC Sports for a couple of years. Helped build all of their, you know, technology, the scoring systems, all that type of stuff, but helping with them with the startup approach. And then just this year, I mean, Nathan and I have been working on Level Method for a while, and just this year I decided to, you know, go full time into Level Method and helping run that system. So that's hopefully the background.
Yeah, and you, so now you're the COO of Level Method, and I know, you know, you're handling obviously everything that operations related, and just having, I mean, I know you guys personally, so I get to see a little bit behind the scenes and see what's going on, but also just watching you guys build this thing. You've done a hell of a job, man. You guys build and implement, you know, high quality, whether it's systems or marketing campaigns, very, very quickly. So I'm really excited to dive into this with you because I think the whole concept of systems, that word is just, I think it's overused and misapplied constantly in our space because, you know, gym owners are like, oh, I need to work on systems, but what the hell does that even mean, right? Because I think you can probably do a pretty good job of maybe summarizing it and dumbing it down for us.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we hear that term all the time, like even in sports, right? Tom Brady's a system quarterback, and it's like, okay, you say that as a negative thing. He's like the greatest quarterback ever, and I'm not a Patriots fan. But, you know, we hear that term used so much, and so to me, to dumb down, what a system is just a combination of parts or an assembly of parts that create a system that has properties. And I guess the easiest system to explain might be a car, right? So a car has a property, which is to get you from point A to point B. And actually here, since let me put my geek glasses since I'm I'm defining
There's
systems
the Sean
here.
I know. Now I'm listening.
Yes. so I'm getting the geeky, but we'll get into some real practical stuff. But I really think it's important. Definitions are really important because if we don't have the same understanding of a definition, then like we could be all over. I could be saying something and you could be interpreting it the wrong way. But really, it's a collection of things that have its own properties. So a car gets you from point A to point B, but none of the individual parts of a car can do that, right? The steering wheel can't take you from point A to point B. The engine can't. The wheels can't. I guess you could stand on the wheel and run, but you know the basic premise though of systems thinking is if we want to improve a system, if we want to improve the car, you have to look at the whole car. So we don't put a big huge engine in the car with a blower motor, but it doesn't actually go faster because the tires can't handle it and the chassis can't handle it, you know, and you might even do more damage to the system by modifying it. So really, to dumb it down, like if you think of a gym, your gym and your operations is a whole system, but you have many systems. You might have a lead gen and a marketing system. You might have a member retention system. You might have a system for how you develop coaches internally, right? But they all play together, and we need to look holistically at that before making changes, because we can optimize one thing and it could cause downstream problems or upstream problems. So that's kind of really what a system is. And people use this word system all the time, but it's a standard set of process and tools. And I guess another way to look at it is like franchises, right? The difference between a franchise and a small business is the systems. It's the procedures, the policies, the standards. They have every role defined. They have every process defined, right? And it's repeatable. And so think of it like a franchise in a way. Even if you're not franchising, think of yourself as a franchise to put in your systems.
Yeah, and I think it's an important point what you just said about the whole holistic approach. I think, oftentimes as people start to grasp this concept in the gym business, they think, okay, cool, I've got some basic systems, right? Maybe I've got my initial sales pipeline worked out where, when we get a lead, we send this email, we make this phone call, and then we have this intro offer. And then I've designed my onboarding program to consist of this. But the big disconnect, I think, is that they're not looking at how it plays into the master system, right? And looking at it as one complete system and seeing, okay, now do I have a steady flow? Are there any disconnects? Does the first system that leads into the second system, does that make sense? Is that teeing that second one up for success? Or like you said, the whole upstream, downstream concept. And I think that's really the opportunity where we see that franchise model is the reason why those are so valuable. And why people oftentimes pay so much money for this thing where you're like, oh, I could totally just go do it myself. No, you probably can't, because they have thousands upon thousands of hours of dialing in every detail of every one of those systems to get a perfect end result. And that's what you're buying, is that you're not buying that, you're saving yourself all the hours, you're saving yourself the heartache, the money to actually experiment and try to figure out which ones work, and you're buying one that is proven. And they can say, if you follow this system or these series of systems, you're going to get this output, and it's completely predictable. And
exactly.
And oftentimes for the small business owner, specifically the gym owner, I think they struggle, because what ends up happening is I see people cobble together different systems, right? And they think like, okay, well, I'm starting to get, like the example I said, I've got my sales system, my onboarding system, maybe a retention system. But then they say, okay, well, I want to do this lead gen thing to maybe like I need more leads. And they forget to consider that, okay, well, if I do this aggressive lead generation system on the front end, right? And there's plenty of different services that are out there for this. And you bolt that on to a weaker system behind it, right? You may have a great advertising campaign or whatever it is on the front end, and you get a crap ton of leads in the front door, but you don't have the retention or the onboarding, the integration, retention, building value, relationships, and all that stuff to match what's now coming in the front. That's where we see a lot of the gyms start struggling when they thought they were doing something positive for themselves. And actually, we've been seeing this in the last few months way more than I think a lot of people expected. Gyms starting to go out of business really fast, or finding themselves in a world of hurt really fast because they did something super aggressive on the front end, couldn't actually handle it, and blew the whole back end out doing it.
Yeah, exactly. And just an interesting stat, and then I want to comment on that a little bit, but 85% of small businesses fail within the first 5 years. However, 75% of franchises are successful. It's completely flipped and reversed because of the systems, like you mentioned, right? And a good book to understand this is E-Myth, or it stands for Entrepreneurial Myth. And there's basically this myth that like a good technician, like a good coach, can then become a good business owner. And sometimes we see that journey where I'm a really good coach. My next progression is to go start my own CrossFit gym, right? And what happens is they don't realize all the other systems and things to run a business, and they get overwhelmed, and that's where they start to fail. But you can short circuit that by buying and integrating other systems if you can look at it and make sure these things are fitting into place. Like Gymwright is one of those. Level Method could be one of those, right? You don't have to start from scratch in your systems, but you have to make sure you're integrating it and applying it properly. So yeah, I think that's definitely key. And, again, I think you got it right away. I mean, I observed this too. Even back in the day, back in CrossFit Active Performance, right? Gyms were going out of business because this Groupon craze, and they were getting shut down because you had this influx of people coming in, and they didn't retain them, and it actually their core members wind up leaving because there was less class. It was just a cluster, right? And I know I followed you and watched you. You had a way of how they onboard, the type of classes they could go to, and you really locked that in, and you thought holistically from start to finish. So it's not that these other systems like heavy lead gen or whatever can't work, but if you haven't thought about it all the way through, that you're going to get in trouble, right? And I think that's the key thing here, is to think of it all the way through before purchasing a system or implementing a system or starting your own system.
Yeah, 100%, man. And that, thanks for the compliment. I mean, we did the best that we could. It was far from perfect, but yeah, we always did try to approach it as holistically as we could to, obviously get the best result that we could. You use something like Groupon, where you're going to get high flow of people who are coming in with a different perceived value, a different understanding of what they're even buying. And we basically just were willing to put in the work to actually still try to build the relationship, still try to get them integrated, create moments for them, through what they, graduating our onboarding. And I know you have some really cool stuff you're going to share on that a little bit later in the show. But it did make a big difference, when we first started doing it versus, once we kind of had our systems down, we were able to grow pretty significantly using those things when everyone else was saying it's not possible. And it really was all just systems. My partner is very similar to you in that he has a background in, or has had a background in systems, lean process, and all that. So between the two of us, we were able to put some pretty good things in place that ended up working out okay. Right. But anyway, I guess let's segue here a little bit. So we talked about what systems are. Why are they so important? Like, what is it? Give us some more understanding about that.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that statistic helps understand why they are so important, right? Because if you're going at it alone and you're going to start up your business, 85% of you will fail within the first 5 years. That's just a statistic. Mm-hmm. But if you're starting with a system, then 75% of those franchises succeed. Now, what that tells me is not that you have to be a franchise, but you have to get systems in place, because the biggest differentiator between a franchise and not a franchise are the systems. In fact, if you look at franchising, that's the first thing you got to do is build repeatable systems. The other thing systems can do is first of all, a lot of things. They can help you sleep better at night. They can let you take a vacation as an owner, right?
That's not what I signed up for. That's not why I got into business on my own here. I wrote that off years ago.
Yeah, and so like everybody has a system, by the way. If it's documented or not, we all have a system. You either create it organically, and sometimes that system is you. And if that system is you, that's a problem, right? So if you're the one putting in all the members, if you're the one that's doing goal setting session calls, if you're doing all the programming, if you're doing everything, you don't have a system. You are the system, right? And so by getting systems in place, anybody can pick up and really pick up the slack, right? So if you've documented how to enter a member into Zenplan or Wodify, like whatever system you use, right? Then your admin, a coach, somebody can just follow that document and put a member in. You don't have to train them, right? They have the processes in place. It's repeatable. Then the other thing is, when we think about continuous improvement and trying to improve, a lot of times, this is a problem I see with gym owners a lot too. Like you said, they pull this, they have a problem, and then they pull this thing and they try it for a month, and then they're like, oh, that didn't work, and they pull this thing. And they're going through so much churn that they don't know really what's working or not, or what's having a bad impact. So if you have a baseline of processes that you can do, when you make a change, you can now analyze this change to the system. Did it help it or hurt it? Right? And so, but if we don't have any system, we don't know if we're helping or hurting or even getting better. We could be getting worse. There's a great book called Lean Startup. which has this notion of minimum viable product and testing things out before you go full force, right? But the biggest thing is to have metrics and data in place to do that. So I think those are why systems are really important. If we think of ourselves as system designers, as gym owners, as designing a system for my gym to run, I'm pulling myself out of the system and then putting people and other processes in place to run. So that's why that's important to me.
Yeah. And it's, especially if you're listening to this and you're thinking, you're one of those people who, you started as a coach, you're passionate about, CrossFit or whatever variation of fitness you're specializing in, that, you got into business, you got this thing off the ground. Maybe it is just you or you and a partner, and you get this thing moving. One of the most common things that I hear is that, how do I grow? How do I get out of this like crazy hamster wheel of coaching 10 classes a day? Plus I'm the guy doing the admin, doing the sales calls. I got to write the newsletter. It's way too much happening, right? And they find themselves painted into a corner, just getting shelled with just a never ending waterfall of work. And it's, they're oftentimes like, well, there's no way out. How the hell would I even get out of this thing? And I think one of the most important things that we can do is to like actively now say, even if it's just a small window every week, trying to dedicate some time to building a system, but not just building the system and then handing it off and never coming back. You have to stay on top of it, right? It has to be measurable, and you have to have a management protocol in place of like, I'll at least check it once a week, once a month, whatever it is, to try to refine it or catch it if it's not working, right? Because what I do see is that the majority of people who are like, got it, I've got some systems, but I just need to get all this off my plate. They just hand it off and walk away, and they're like, whew, I feel better. But 3 months later, it all hits the fan all over again, and now they're not the ones who were doing it, so it's not an easy fix. They now have to dissect what the employee didn't do or did do, and it actually ends up becoming a way bigger nightmare than it was just when it was just you by yourself.
Yeah, and honestly, metrics and measurement is a key part of the system. So going back to the car analogy, right? We have a speedometer, we have a gas gauge, we have miles per gallon, we have all. How do we know that system is working health and it's a healthy system? We have these dashboards, and actually that's where the term dashboard has come from. And so large companies, if you look at large companies, some of the ones I've consulted with, they have these overall dashboards that tell them how their teams are doing, revenue coming in, costs, right? These dashboards are real time and they can see. So whenever you implement something, and an easy example to use for people is like lead gen, right? So how many you spent how much on ads, how many people went to your site, then conversion rates, how many people scheduled an intro session, how many people signed up, right? Once you get these metrics, then you can start to tweak your ads and you can see if those percentages are going up or down. So yeah, measurement. And again, the gym owner, I know what it's like. I mean, back in 2012 when we opened, man, many sleepless nights of doing everything yourself, cleaning the gym, taking out you almost are doing everything yourself when you're first getting started, but you have to start to elevate yourself, get people doing that, and then consider yourself sort of the master designer of this system.
Yep. Okay, so what types of systems should gym owners be working on?
Yeah, so one of the ones I wanted to talk about here is member retention, right? Because a lot of people focus on lead gen for usually they think if I just run this program and get all these people in my gym, it's going to solve all my problems. And like we said, if you don't have a way to retain those members, it's going to be an issue. The other thing is member retention can be a lead generation system in itself, 100%. Right? If you're creating raving fans in your gym and you're doing a process like goal setting, which I want to talk about a little bit too, because I think goal setting is the number one thing that gyms aren't doing that could have a drastic impact. And I'll talk about the reasons why. And I'll even share like the system that we recommend in Level Method and help people through that. But, if that you can have a process in your goal setting sessions to ask them for referrals, ask them if they know anybody else, right? So building those in can also be the whole system. So when we think about it, your member retention can also be lead gen, and we got to look at that holistically. And powerful moments, right? So a power of moments is another system. I think gym owners intuitively get this and they've seen it, right? It started with the PR bell. When you had a PR bell and somebody had a moment and that was cool and that was, people loved that moment. Or recognizing people in some way. I see though, a lot of times it's not systematized, so it's really up to the coach or it's up to whoever, and it's a very inconsistent sort of rewarding people in power moments, and that's why actually there's a good book, Power Moments, if by Chip and Dan Heath.
What book is that? What book is that?
Power Moments. It's a great book, and it goes into a lot of things. But one of those, goal setting session, can even be a part of the Power Moment system, which is helping people see the progress that they're going through. Obviously rewarding, and if anybody follows any gym that's doing Level Method, and this really isn't about Level Method, but you'll see people holding certificates on their social media more than you will see people laying on the ground in sweat angels, right? Because you're trying to portray that you're having these powerful moments, and social media is your window from the outside into your facility. Do you want people looking, saying, I don't want to be laying on the floor dying? Or do you want them saying, I don't know what they're smiling about or what everybody's happy about, but I just want to be there, right? So having a system for powerful moments of how you put it on social media, how do you reward people, whether you're using Level Method, we say it's a manufacturing plant for powerful moments because we have 345 data points here. That is a way to reward somebody and create that powerful moment. But if you're not using Level Method, whether it's a PR or, and I will say one thing about powerful moments, objective moments are better than subjective. And what do I mean by that? Everybody knows, like, when you first get a pull-up, like everybody celebrates that, or a muscle-up. That's an objective thing that's difficult, and like Level Method is objective. But having an objective, powerful moment, everybody can celebrate it. If somebody just went up 5 pounds on their press, like, okay, that's good for them, but everybody's like, okay, cool. But if they accomplish something that everybody knows is difficult objectively, that's where the real power, because the community, there's a powerful moments around communities, right? So having systems in place to do that, we teach people with Level Method exactly how to do that with rewarding. How we give them reports in the software of when people leveled up and how you can go do that. But if you're not using Level Method, do those in place. Sit down and say, what are the powerful moments we want to create in our gym? Because I will tell you this, I think the number one job of a gym owner is creating powerful moments for people, right? And it's not getting results. Yes, getting results can be a powerful moment, but like, it's not the results in themselves, because people go to work all day and they're stressed out. They go to their home life and they're stressed out. They're being yelled at by somebody. They're feeling like crap. Sometimes coming to the gym is their sanctuary. It's like the one place where they can feel great. And if you're not rewarding them and making them feel great, they're going to leave and go somewhere else, right? So I think our number one job is creating those powerful moments. So goal setting sessions, a lot of people try them, but they don't do them systematically. And I think that's where they start to fail, because there is an art and a science to it. But some benefits of goal setting sessions, right? It gives you a chance to show people their progress. And we do quarterly goal setting sessions, and we recommend to gyms quarterly goal setting sessions. And we have like a complete process, preparing for the goal setting, how to conduct goal setting sessions, how to follow up after goal setting sessions. But first, even yourself, right? Start with, like, if you're going to do goal setting sessions, just write it out, right? And I'll share actually some of the forms that we use. I'll put them in the show notes so that people can check out and use Google Forms. But start with even just drawing out what your process is, right? And here we have set up goals appointment in Zen Planner or whatever, right? Create the appointments that you can make. Schedule sessions, right? Getting the schedule sessions, conduct the goal sessions, etc. Now, the benefits of doing this is member retention and lead generation. So there's this thing called the recency effect. It's like, what have you done for me lately? And gym owners, you've probably seen it. You've probably seen people make great progress over the past year, and they had a bad week. They didn't lift what they thought they should have. They didn't meet something they should have, and they think like they're getting worse, when in reality they've come so far. And they can't see that, though, because they've only see recently what has happened. And then they get discouraged, and then they stop showing up to class, and then it just becomes a downward spiral. But by having quarterly goal setting sessions where you can objectively say, look, here's where you were, and having a good assessment framework like Level Method works. But even if you don't, whether you do benchmark workouts or baselines, you need some sort of way to assess them in the goal setting session. Because then you can say, okay, the next 3 months, what are our goals? Where are we going to march towards the next 3 months? You want to improve your squat? Okay, let's work on that. Here's how we're going to do it. Then in that next follow-on goal setting session, you can say, look how far you've come. Look at where we've done, and you're keeping them engaged and scheduling the next goal setting session. So there's always this sort of, I need to be improving and getting better, but I'm also looking backwards and seeing how far I've come. And that's going to be key to retaining people, as well as, getting people just excited about upcoming events you have. Like, so if you have a nutrition challenge in the goal setting session, you can tell them about it, right? You can develop a better one-on-one rapport with your coaches and your clients, especially if you have large classes and they're not getting a lot of one-on-one time. This is the time for a coach-client relationship as well. So I'll stop there. I've talked about a lot, but and I can go into really specifically how we do goal setting sessions, but that's really the importance of that system that I recommend every gym implement.
Yeah, and what I love about the whole goal setting sessions, especially if you can get them onto a quarterly cadence, is like all the things that you just said, yes, but plus you have the ability to, like, you're able to have that personal check-in with someone, and it's the accountability factor too. And
Right.
if you run a gym, you know how crucial this is to your success. Because if you're not holding people accountable to, staying consistent on their attendance or, working on their goal or whatnot, it allows you to stay in control ultimately, right? Versus you have someone who's just kind of coming and going through group classes. Everything seems fine. You're busy working on whatever you've got going on. And then 6 months later, they cancel. Well, because you're able to check in, you're able to kind of reset that personal touch point and able to say, hey, look, we had a goal to, make your attendance, at least 4 days a week for this last quarter because of your goal. Looks like you fell off a little bit month 2. What happened? And you're able to really check back in, but you're through this conversation, letting them know that, it's kind of on them, but you're able to now be the helper, right? Rather than it just being, I just feel like I failed. I'm too far gone. There's no saving this. I was doing so good. I fell off for 3 months because kids and back to school season and, and then I got sick and then this project at work. And now I'm like, I can't even do, I'm totally falling behind on my numbers. You're able to check back in. And even though life happens, because it happens to all of us, you're able to maintain the personal relationship. And because you're maintaining the personal relationship, you're able to address those things and say, hey, look, it's okay. It happens to me too. Remember last year when I had that thing happening, I had to my training had to take a back seat, or at least my progress had to take a back seat. And I was more in a maintenance mode. Hey, why don't we do this? This next quarter, since you've got a lot going on, take the pressure off yourself. You don't need to PR every single quarter or every single time that we go through a testing cycle. Let's make the goal this time maintenance. So let's bring it down to 2-3 days a week, and let's celebrate that for a win. And showing them that this is not just about forward motion, that it's about how to manage this lifestyle and managing their expectations and teaching them how to become successful with fitness, which is really what our role is as a coach, right? We don't sell gym memberships. We're here to help people actually have a fitness lifestyle, a fitness routine. We want them to live a longer, healthier, more fulfilling life. And that is going to ebb and flow. And most people don't understand that. They think, well, once I've signed up and I've done a year's worth of going from, overweight to now I'm, doing snatches and kipping pull-ups and whatever, they think I can never go back. Because if I take one step back out of the 300 forward I've taken, it's all over. I'm done. There's no saving this thing. And it allows you to manage that part of it, that expectation. And that is one of the main reasons people quit, is because they just feel like because they're working off of misinformation, a lifetime of poor conditioning around their relationship and understanding of fitness and of nutrition and what do I do. Not to mention, this is also your golden opportunity for upselling, right?
Yeah.
And I know that for you guys, the Level Method gyms, because you guys have this systematic approach to managing their main fitness, right, through the classes and the workouts. Now it's broken into levels. It's very, very similar to what we did at Active. And it was a big differentiator for us versus a lot of the other gyms at the time. And you guys are therefore able to say, hey, well, you really want to get that first muscle up. We have this, have you considered doing personal training or doing custom program design or whatever it is that you do offer now as an upsell? This is a perfect opportunity to have these conversations. And not only can you turn people around, but you can oftentimes now upsell. And this makes a big difference to our bottom line in this business, right? It's that average client value is really where all the profit is. It's not in adding more bodies as much as it is making more per person.
Yeah, exactly. And there's that saying, people don't know, or they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And these goal setting sessions are a chance to really show you care. Being concerned about someone not showing up to class or not meeting their goals and helping them say, hey, life happens, but let's get over that. it can go a long way to keeping that member long term, right? And even,
No
some
doubt.
things we've seen in goal setting sessions where somebody's not feeling good. Maybe they injured themselves, not in class, but typically it's like, they're playing basketball, they sprained their ankle, and they think they shouldn't be coming in. And then you can help them get on a recovery, a mobility protocol, right? You can say, no, keep coming to class. We have things for you to do. So there's a lot of things you can head off, as well as just keep people on track. And that's definitely key. And I think the upselling is key, but you never want to upsell somebody again until they know how much you care. And your upselling should come natural. It should say, hey, look, I know in your goal setting, you said you wanted to lose 10 pounds. We have this nutrition challenge coming up. It sounds like it would be a great fit for you and really get you to your goal. Does that sound good to you? Are you interested in that? They're much more likely to say it than just going up to people in class saying, sign up for the nutrition challenge, sign up for the nutrition challenge, right?
Right. Hard sell.
So yeah, you have to be relatable to them, and that doesn't always happen in classes. That happens in these goal setting sessions.
Right.
But the key to these goal setting sessions is you got to systematize it, right? Because some people are really good at it because they're just naturally good at speaking with people, like Tony Robbins, right? You hear Tony Robbins just talk to somebody, diagnoses things, and just helps them see things, right? And some people just don't really know what to do. So one of the things we recommend is even if you create a Google form, and this is something that we can share to the group as a Google form, and you can just make a copy of it, but make a copy of it for your gym and have everybody, when they're doing a goal setting session, if your coaches are doing this, submit the form. It makes it a little bit more repeatable. And even if people suck at doing goal setting sessions, it will get better, right? It'll get better if they're answering the same question. So I can kind of walk through some of the things that we do in our goal setting session.
Let's do it. Walk us through, because that is what you just raced through right there with the whole Google form piece. I think people are going to flip out when they see how much easier this makes your life from a management. You're not losing papers. Hey, where did so-and-so's sheets go? Nothing gets lost. It's all being documented. So yeah, if you wouldn't mind, man, walk us through your process step by step so anyone listening to this can take it and actually apply it in their gym today if they wanted to.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'll walk again. We have a process that's step by step, and I'll use some examples of level method gyms, but all these things apply even if you're not a level method gym. Level method does make it a little bit easier because we give them reports of their levels and their weak areas. So, one of the first steps that we recommend at level method gyms is to print out their screenshot of what their levels are, so you can get a snapshot of that athlete. Then you conduct the goal setting session. Now, the goal setting session should be about 15 to 20 minutes. Now, if it's a new member, I want to give a really quick tool that I use, because the most important thing you can do in the first goal setting session, and this typically should take place in your on-ramp or fundamentals or your however you do it, the most important thing you can do is find their purpose. Why are they there in that gym, right? Because if it's just to lose weight, everybody says that, right? But there's some deeper meaning that got them off their butt to come to your gym. And once you get to that emotional sort of purpose, that's going to set the term going forward, going to set the tone going forward, excuse me. But there's a tool we use in Lean called 5 Whys. And it's a very simple tool. It's 5 Whys. You just keep asking why 5 times, right? So if somebody says, I just want to lose weight, just ask, well, why do you want to lose weight? Well, I just would like to look better, and I'd like to fit into my old clothes. Okay, well, why do you want to look better and fit into your old clothes? Well, my daughter's been gaining weight, and I want to be an example for her. And then you start, and I don't want to tell my daughter what to do unless I can show her how I'm doing it, right? Or you'll start to touch on these things, or sometimes it's like, well, I just had a baby, and I want to be there for my grandchildren. It was this life experience that made me realize I need to get my health intact. Once you find that root cause, like that, you got to document that, and you got to keep that. You got to put that in a form, and you got to remind people of that, right? Because their why is what's going to keep them in sort of longer term. So the first goal setting session is key to establish. It'll probably be longer than 15, 20 minutes, but as you get on a rhythm, these goal setting sessions should only take 15 to 20 minutes. So then we have a link to the form that people would use, right? So obviously there's some basics like the name of the person conducting the goal setting session, because we recommend that you get your coaches doing this with you as well, not you being the only one doing the coaching or the consulting sessions, goal sessions. The client name, so we have a log of that. Is it initial goal setting session or not, right? Yes or no. We do recommend in person, especially for the first one, has to be in person. But going forward, with people's schedules and work, maybe they can hop out for a 15-minute call in between meetings or a lunch break. So, but if you can, try to do Skype or something visual where you can really have that connection. In person is best. Video call would be second best. Phone call would be third. Phone call is better than nothing at all, right? But we log like what type of session it was and then the date. And then we start off with some questions. How are things going? What are you most proud of over the last 2 to 3 months? So we want to get them talking and hear and see if they're realizing or recognizing the benefits. And you jot that down. There's a reason for that, because in the system, we have a follow-up that we send them afterwards to summarize what the goal setting session was like, right? Because that's key. You're like, hey, here's the things we talked about. Here's the things you're going to work on. What have you struggled with the most, right? This is a chance, especially in the first early goal setting sessions. Maybe they've struggled with getting to class on time. Maybe they've struggled with a movement or something like that, right? You're just trying to understand possible problems to help and put some coaching points in place and give some advice. Have your goals changed? If this is a repeating goal session, have your goals changed? What are your current goals? And list 2 to 3, right? Because maybe it's to prepare for a Tough Mudder, maybe it's to get into a certain size jeans or whatever. But listing these down, we want to make sure we're capturing them. And then here's the why question: why are these goals important, right? And their why may change over time. So even if it's a repeating goal setting session, if it's a new goal, it's like, why is that goal important? And then we got to get to that purpose. And then we talk about, so what are 2 to 3 ways we can measure and know that this will happen? What are the action items, So if they're obviously the losing weight, okay, we can look at in-body results, right? We can look at something like that. But if it's something like, again, with level method, we look at their 2 weakest areas across the 15 different categories, and we say, okay, your kettlebell test and your rowing are your lowest scores. Like, let's work on improving them, and we'll know. But if the next 3 months you level up in each category, then that's a metric that will tell us you're improving, right? Because if you don't have these specific metrics, people really don't know if they're improving. And then we have a note here in the form for the coach to make. This isn't something that's shared, but what additional services will help them reach their goal faster? Now, we talked about upselling. We don't recommend upselling in this session. The reason why is because if people feel like your goal setting sessions are all about upselling and that's the goal of them, they're going to stop doing goal setting sessions. So it's important to do that upsell after the fact and quite possibly have a different person reach out to them. But this is where the coach can actually start to record, hey, they want to lose X, Y, and Z. They would be a great candidate for the nutrition challenge. Or they want to get better at weightlifting. We should send them the information on the weightlifting workshop coming up in 2 months, right? And so this is the chance for the coach to do that. Now, the next appointment date, we like to try to schedule that. Now, like we said, we highly recommend doing quarterly goal setting sessions and compressing them all for everybody. There's a reason for this. It creates a little bit of momentum. It makes goal setting sessions seem like it's a group thing that we're all doing, right? And then everybody can talk, oh, did you do your goal setting session, right? It also makes it a little easier for you to manage as coaches and people. Because once you get in the right mind of goal setting sessions, you can pump through these in 15 minutes. You know, it becomes a little bit easier to get through. But if you have on your calendar, these are the weeks. Like I know you guys just released the 2019 calendar. We have a 2019 calendar with level method specific things that we overlay in it, and it has the goal setting. And so we schedule the next one in this session, right? To give them that thing to look forward to and let them know that, hey, this is a repeating thing that we're always going to do. And then so we schedule that at the end of the form. Now, see, all those questions, even if somebody isn't saying anything, even if you're a coach and you're just asking these questions and recording them, that a lot of times people will be talking through things and they'll have their own realizations. It doesn't mean your coaches have to have some profound wisdom at the end of the goal setting session that like blows their mind or anything. The act of just having the goal setting session and then letting them know, you know, hey, you care about what their goals are and giving them a few things. Now, what we like to do is give them 1 or 2 things that they can work on to help them to their goal, like just free advice, you know, just like, hey, you might want to come in and just do pull-ups on Saturdays and just focus on pull-ups, or you might want to do this little thing here, or, you know, again, nothing that's extra charge. You're giving them free advice on how they can get to whatever goal they are. So always try to leave with recommending those few things. And that form help guides your system. Now there's like I said, in the whole process of the system, that's just one piece, but then following up with next actions, right? We like to summarize this, and you can take this because what a Google form does is it puts it into an Excel sheet. and then you could go send an email and copy the points that you want in there and email it out to the client saying, hey, thanks for the goal setting session. Here's a review of what we talked about, and here's a review of your next goals, and here's your next appointment date. So that closes sort of that end of the system. And then if you're meeting with your coaching team, that's the other benefit of doing all these goal setting sessions together, is when you have your coaches meetings, the coaches can talk about what they're hearing, like just like general themes they're seeing. And then they can also talk about the recommended things and how you should promote your nutrition challenge, your the open, or, whatever event or workshop, whatever's coming up. You can talk about that and then figure out how, who's going to reach out to them, et cetera. So that kind of, I know that was a lot, that sort of summarized everything, but the biggest points to take away, even if you don't use these questions, is have a standard set of questions. Even if you're the most experienced person in a goal setting session, go through the form yourself. That's the system. You follow the system. You follow the process. If you go to Orange Theory, you go to 25, you go to any of these things, they type up their computer, they ask the questions the same way, and it's just repeatable. And so the thing about that too is if some person gets a goal setting session with a different coach, they're going to have the same experience, right? So that's why we just follow the system, follow the processes.
Awesome, man. Now, thank you for sharing all that, by the way. That was super helpful. Now, I know a question that'll likely come up in the comments below is, how do you manage even like scheduling or, making sure you're following up with people? Because, it may not seem like a big deal if you've got, 30, 40 clients, but someone listing with 150, 200 people, they're like, how the heck do you manage all of this every quarter?
Yeah, exactly. So if your membership management software doesn't have a appointment scheduling add-on, I recommend Acuity Scheduling. It's ACUITY scheduling. And I think they have a free version, but you can have, even the paid versions, maybe $20 a month or something like that. But it allows you to set times, and you can sync them with calendars. So you can sync them with people's calendars. You can have multiple members, if you will, all your coaches can be in there. It can sync to their calendar. And so when somebody goes in to schedule a goal setting session, it's not going to allow them to book a time that's already blocked off on that person's calendar, right? Sure. So that is one of the best tools from a scheduling perspective. And then obviously getting all your coaches on the same page. One thing I will say is if you haven't done this before, it's going to be a little awkward at first, right? It's going to be awkward for your members and it's going to be awkward for your coaches. I will say stick to it, right? Stick to it, get to a repeatable process. It will get better. They will get used to it. And then as new people come in and are on board, and this is where we talk about the whole system, right? If you have that first goal setting session, a part of your onboarding process, and let them know you set the tone for regular goal setting sessions as well. And having your coaches understand, go through do mock goal setting sessions in a training. If you do coaches meetings where you have a part where you're focusing on training, train them on the system, have them ask the questions of you, and you can answer them to get that sort of back and forth going if they've never done a goal setting session before. But yeah, using a tool to do scheduling is absolutely key, especially if you have lots and lots of members. Keeping it to 15-minute blocks is key if you have lots and lots of members. In a week, if you have the coaches and the capacity, you got to figure out, can you get everybody through? Now, everybody's not going to go through and do a goal setting session. That's the other thing we have to realize too, and not get upset about that. You're going to have those 10, 15, 20% of people that schedule it right away. You're going to have those 10, 15% of people that are going to be pulling teeth. And then you're going to have those in the middle that will start, just slowly come on board and need a few reminders to get on board. But yeah, that would be my advice. Use a tool to help you with scheduling, and that integrates with your calendar so you don't have to constantly be updating that.
Got it. And something I was realizing I actually meant to say earlier, but the wonderful thing about making goal setting part of what you do with everyone, I think in the marketplace today, there's a lot of competing, there's a lot of static, there's a lot of noise, a lot of sameness. Everyone looks like they're doing the same thing, and we're dealing with the regular population. We're not trying to sell to just athletes. The majority of our business usually is dependent on regular people wanting to get in shape and all that, right?
Right.
So, being goal oriented and making it about, hey, we're actually here to help you achieve your goals versus sell a gym membership, I think is a big differentiator. Yep. Because, people are shopping around, they go drop on it, they go check out this box, they go to this Orange Theory, they go to this boot camp. And if it's really made about them and saying, look, you said your goal was, to lose those 40 pounds by the time you go on that vacation with your husband in August, that's 8 months away. Here's exactly how we're going to do it. Like, first of all, it should be part of your prescriptive selling process up
Exactly.
front.
Yeah.
So that's step one. So that'll already help you stand out right out of the gate, showing that you're goal oriented. But then it's also, so it's a differentiator right out of the gate. But then also it's going to allow you to use the relationship, which is the one thing that can't be commoditized, is the fact that you now have a relationship, right? So the differentiating factor right out of the gate to help you stand out, but then allows you to continue doing that, because even if someone can get a better deal somewhere else, they have the relationship with you. So it kind of ties the whole thing together.
Exactly. And again, going back to the power of moments as well, right? I think it's on page 168, 169. They talk about a sort of scenario where there was a couple that were married and they would argue, and they were keeping this journal of things. And it wasn't, what happened was over time they saw things get easier and easier, even if they fought, it was nothing like they fought before. And it provided a profound sort of power moment to see their progress in this. And so that's where these goal setting sessions help too, because you're showing them how far they've come. Even if they're feeling down on themselves because they had a setback or they haven't been coming, you could say, look at where you've come from before. You know, even if you feel like last week wasn't a good week, look at this. And that creates a powerful moment, because they start to get what's called pride. Pride is one of the sort of categories of powerful moments. They feel this sense of pride, like, I did accomplish that. Wow, that's really cool. Thanks for reminding me. They would have, if you don't do the goal setting sessions, they're never going to think about that on their own. People have a hard time looking back and doing what we call retrospectives, right? And so this is your chance to say, look at how far you've come, and start to instill that pride that they can do it. And then, it'll create momentum for the next session as well.
Sure. Awesome, man. Well, anything else you want to add for the whole goal setting system and how someone can implement this, or any tips?
Okay. So one big life hack thing that I want to talk about, so you can use it for this process, but any process, right?
Yeah.
So documenting processes and making things standard can seem daunting at first, but here's a great tip for anybody. I highly recommend you get a screen recording tool, screen capture tool. We use Cloud App. iCloud is Mac, but there's something called Cloud App. It's online. I use it every day almost, because and I'll use an example, like the goal setting session, I could walk through the form and show people how to type things in. But let's say member management, right? Let's say you're putting in, when a new member comes in, there's a process for putting them in your member management software. You print out this, you do this, and you do all these things on the computer. If you record that and narrate, like, okay, here's how I log into the system, here's how I add the membership, I add this type of membership based on this, I click this, I do this, then you hand that video off to an admin. If you have an intern or an admin or a coaching intern, someone like that who can free you up. And what you do is you make them watch the video, open up a Google Doc, and start recording. Step one, log into the member management system, and then they can take a screenshot from that video and put it in there. Step two, pull up member record. They take a screenshot and put it in there. And then now you have a document. You have this Google Doc that you can hand, like, if you're on vacation, someone's like, oh, I need a new member. How do I add them? You send them the link to the Google Doc. They follow step by step by step by step how to put it in, right? This can work for also things around, just video yourself, like walking around the gym, like, here's how I stack the weights, or here's how I put things in a certain place. Mm-hmm. Then again, hand it off to somebody who can create a Google Doc and take screenshots of the video and narrate, because people aren't going to go pulling up watching videos every time they need to add a member, but they can quickly pull up a Google Doc and say, oh yeah, I forgot that step. So that's sort of a master habit of documenting processes, or screen recording tools can be your best friend. I use them constantly. I'm always sending them to people. Instead of me doing the work myself, I'll record myself doing the work, and then I'll send them the video to create a process so they can repeat it. So that's one key piece of advice I would recommend. Yeah,
that's a great tip. And if you're listening to this and you're thinking like, yeah, well, I don't have an admin, I'm a one-man show, or, I don't know who I'm supposed to, my coaches don't want to do that sort of thing. Just know that there are plenty of resources available online, from virtual assistants to like companies like Upwork and Elance, where you can find people for very, very low dollar an hour rates that you can send this stuff to, and you realize like, oh, having that SOP turned in, or having that quick video I did that took me, 8 minutes to record, I sent it off. It cost me $12 to have someone turn it into this thing. And now I have this working SOP. Again, if you make it a habit that whenever you do something new, or maybe if you're, a one-man show trying to scale up and bring a team in, where you dedicate some time every week to just hammering out as many of these as you can, in a very short amount of time, you're going to start building that overall series of systems to get you eventually out of these things. And where would you recommend someone starts, by the way? If someone is trying to go from, let's say, one man, one woman show and use systems to kind of dig themselves out and start bringing people in, are there any areas or philosophies that you subscribe to that someone could say, like, okay, well, high value versus low value, or time and all that? Where would someone even begin?
Okay, so I'll start with a theoretical thing real quick, and then I'll go into, so I'll put my key
hold
glasses
on. I got it. I realize I have some here too. The blue blocker, but here we go. I'm listening.
I recommend a book called Clockwork by Michael Michalowicz. And I have it on audiobook, so I guess I could pull it up on my phone and show you, but I don't have the actual copy book. But one of the notions in Clockwork is your queen bee role, right? And so what I would recommend gym owners do is list all of the things that they're doing. Like, put all the things you do in a list. And then you start to, what is the most important thing that you should be doing to run your business? And you got to get to that and highlight that. I would say and that will change if you're in firefighting mode, because you just have so much. Your most important role might be to just make sure membership's coming in or whatever. But eventually, your most important role should be the system designer or the CEO of your gym, where you're actually putting standards and processes and stuff in place. But first, you need to know what's important. And then you need to look at that list and say, what can I cut? What can I just stop doing? What is not adding value to my processes and my gym and my system today? Because there might be things that you're just stuck in the weeds of doing them because you've always done them, but we can get those off, right? Then the next step is, what can I delegate? So what are the things? And I would look at the most repeatable things you do on a daily basis, right? If it's and delegate can also mean outsource too. If you're doing your programming and you're spending a ton of time doing programming, we have levels-based programming with Level Method. I know the work that goes into it. It can save gym owners 20 hours a month.
That's a big one.
So something like that, where you can delegate either to somebody or a company, right? Is this something I can delegate that can free me up? So you got to look at what things can free up your time the most. Then you start to have like this snowball effect, right? Where things are, you take that free time that you saved and you work on systems, right? And then you use that time to create a system to solve something else, and it's going to free up your time the most, right? But I will say, even back in the day when we first opened it's hard when you're in firefighting mode and like you're just trying to pay the bills and you're just trying to get everything. It's really hard to elevate and think of yourself this way. But the most practical advice, to take your biggest pain point, your biggest thing that's taken the most time, and figure out if you can give that to somebody else to free you up for these higher value things. Eventually, you want to be to that state where you're just putting systems in place and hiring people to do them, and it just runs like clockwork. That's why the book's called Clockwork.
Awesome advice. Awesome, man. Thank you. All right. So you said you're going to be willing to share some of those documents and some of those tools with us. So if you're listening to this, whether it's on podcast or you're catching this on YouTube, be sure to check out the show notes on gymwright.com. We'll have it all laid out. We'll link everything out. We'll put it in our private Facebook group as well, which if you're not in it, you should be. So thank you very much, Sean, for doing that. Final question for you. In one sentence, if you could give one piece of advice to a gym owner, what would it be?
Create systems that run your business, or your business is going to run you. That's the bottom. That's the most simple way I could put it. If you're not creating systems to run your business, it's going to run you.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you very much for being on today. Where can people find more about you?
Well, more about me. I mean, you can connect on LinkedIn. Look up for Sean Buck on LinkedIn. Also just our company, levelmethod.com, www.levelmethod.com. We have a webinar. If people are like, what is Level Method? I don't understand what it is. We have a webinar that kind of Nathan walks through and explains what Level Method is. We also, you can then easily schedule a discovery session, no sweat, where we just answer any questions you have about it. It's not like some high pressure tactic or anything, because we just want to make sure people are educated before they come on board. So levelmethod.com. But if you're interested in connecting with me personally, LinkedIn's probably the best way. If you have questions specific to anything I talked about, feel free to, I'm in the network group, the Gymwright network group. So feel free to just tag me, and ask your question, and I'd be happy to, provide links or resources of anything else that I talked about. Yeah.
Awesome, Sean. Well, thanks again for taking the time. Tons of really great information. Thank you very much. And I want to also thank all of you motivated gym owners for joining us today. Again, if you're listening to this via podcast, be sure to check out the video version of this interview along with the extensive show notes at gymwright.com. And if you are enjoying the show, please do leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Your support means the world to us. Also, if you'd like to watch the show live, be sure to tune in every Friday right here in the network, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Thanks again for your support. Now get out there and build something that matters. We'll see all you guys again next week. Bye-bye.